My name is Carmen Balber. I'm the Executive Director of Consumer Watchdog, and we're here today to lift the veil of secrecy about physician sexual assault and patient harm that causes irreparable damage to Californians across the state. With the Me Too and Time's Up movements, we have seen the veil of secrecy be lifted in the legislature, in Hollywood, in workplaces across the nation around sexual assault. But the one place we have not seen the same reaction is in the doctor's office, where patients should feel safest. So we're here today to say it's time to lift the veil of secrecy around physician sexual assault and other patient harm that causes irreparable damage to Californians. We're here today because the California Medical Board is meeting, and the California Medical Board is responsible for protecting patients from dangerous doctors, but they're falling down on the job. We're introducing a patient bill of rights to give patients the right to notice, transparency, and accountability. So when doctors harm patients, they're warned, and that doctors who harm patients are disciplined. Right now we have a situation where only 18% of patient complaints about physician harm, whether it's for sexual assault, drug abuse, even patient death, only 18% even reach the point where a patient is interviewed about their complaint. And that is the kind of situation that has to stop. So we're introducing a patient Bill of Rights today with all of the families behind me who have been harmed either by physician sexual assault or by negligence that caused the loss of a loved one. We're in a time now where the entire nation has recognized the need to open up the doors, increase the sunlight, but physicians are the one profession where the doors are still closed, where no one is informed and patients continue to get harmed because of it. I'm going to give you just the outline of the Patient Bill of Rights and then introduce each of the families behind me to tell you about their experience and why they're urging the board to act today to reform and ensure patients have knowledge that they need and that doctors who are dangerous to patients get disciplined. The Patient Bill of Rights includes the right to notice and participation, such as the right to be interviewed when you submit a complaint to the medical board about a patient being harmed. Marion and Eric behind me will both tell their stories about having lost loved ones and complaining to the medical board, only to ultimately be informed that the case was closed without ever being interviewed by the board. That's the farthest thing from accountability for physicians who harm patients that I can imagine. The Patient Bill of Rights includes the right to transparency, such as, for example, the right to notice if your doctor is on probation. Right now, a doctor has to tell their employer, they have to tell their insurance company if they get placed on probation by the California Medical Board for serious patient harm, including sexual assault and patient death. But what doctors don't have to do is tell their patients when they are on probation, and that is a gross miscarriage of justice. Patients need the information to make an informed decision about their medical care. That right to transparency is in the Patient Bill of Rights, and it would certainly have helped some of the patients behind us here today. Michelle is an example who can tell you more about that. The Patient Bill of Rights includes the right to timely action. You will see that investigations at the medical board often take 4 years or more from the beginning of a complaint to final disciplinary action. In the meantime, more patients get harmed. The medical board needs to step up to the plate and speed up their investigations, and the SMICs who are here with us today can tell their story of 4 years pushing every step of the way, every day, every week, to try and get the medical board to act in the case of the death of their son. The Bill of Rights also includes the right to proportionate enforcement, and we see time and again that the medical board does not follow their own guidelines when setting out punishment for doctors who harm patients. You can see no better example than Carrie, who is behind me, whose doctor had had prior complaints to the medical board about sexual assault of patients, yet the medical board did nothing about those complaints, and many, many, many other patients were harmed. The Patient Bill of Rights also includes the right to independent arbiters, so there are no conflicts of interest between the people who are making the decisions about discipline and the people who are receiving that discipline, and the right to accountability. And we think the state legislature needs to audit the enforcement process of the medical board to ensure that they're doing their job the way they say they will. I will just add to this that the patients who are here with us today are representative of patients across the state in one way, because so many patients are harmed by physicians who are never held accountable for their actions. But they're also extraordinarily unique because they knew enough to know that they could go to the medical board and make a complaint. Most patients in this state have no idea there even is a medical board, let alone that they have the right to make a complaint or look up the record of their doctor. And when patients have no idea the board even exists, then patients don't have any knowledge about the disciplinary actions and the past histories of patient harms of their doctors, which is why transparency and disclosure of physician disciplinary action, especially in the egregious cases you'll hear about in a moment, is so important. I will just finally say that each of these patients is incredibly courageous, and each of their stories has inspired this Patient Bill of Rights because they have shown so clearly how the physician disciplinary system has failed in California. Doctors are not disciplined when they do harm, even when they kill patients. And when they are disciplined, patients have no knowledge that that discipline happened. And so the system is broken. The Patient Bill of Rights is the way for the medical board to finally accept their responsibility for patient safety and agree to principles that will ensure patients are kept safe. So let me first introduce Carrie H., who's right here behind me, who can tell her story.
Okay. That's all right. I wasn't expecting. I was sexually assaulted by my doctor a year and a half ago. Well, actually more than a year and a half ago. And it took a lot to get him to be prosecuted. But thankfully for LAPD and the Sex Crimes Unit and Detective Marino, I had a person that was really standing behind me in making sure that he was brought to justice, which I'm very happy, and that's been here lately, that he was actually convicted or took a plea deal for it. I don't know what else. Okay. It's been a long road, but standing here today and fighting for patient rights is something that needs to be done, and I'm glad to be here to help.
Lisa, did you want to?
Sure. My name is Lisa Mackey. I'm a victim's advocate, and we'd like to thank the LAPD who investigate and prosecute these kind of charges. Carrie H. is a really good example of that. She did the right thing. Right after she was sexually assaulted and battered, she contacted the police. And the sad reality of what we have going on in the whole country is that most sex crimes are not reported. So many of them are not prosecuted because they're tough cases. They're he said, she said. People are afraid to speak out at work, especially against their employer. And then with respect to doctors, they're worried that no one will believe them and no one will stand by them. So we're really grateful for all of the advocates here today, for the victims that are working tirelessly to change the system, and also to Consumer Watchdog, and in Carrie H.'s case, to Detectives Toosby and Moreno. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy and Tim, can you introduce yourselves since I did not?
Hi, my name is Tammy Smick, and I'm here with my husband, Tim Smick. This is our 20-year-old son, Alex. He was killed by medical negligence. Alex had become dependent on prescription pain medications following a serious back injury. And in February of 2012, Alex sought treatment for the opioid dependency. He sought treatment from Dr. Daniel J. Hedrick at Mission Hospital's Pacific Coast Recovery Center in Laguna Beach. Alex's goal was to safely detox. However, within 2 hours of arriving at the hospital, Dr. Hedrick had placed Alex on a new regimen of medications. He started giving him medications within 2 hours. Alex was given 11 different medications. And on the first night in the hospital at 11 p.m., Alex got his last dose of medication. And then because Dr. Hedrick wrote an order to only check Alex's vitals while awake, Alex was left unmonitored all night without even one blood pressure check. And when he was finally checked on during morning rounds, Alex was found dead. He was already in rigor mortis. Our son had been seizing, vomiting, and fighting for his life for hours, and no one came to help him because of Dr. Hedrick's orders. We filed a complaint with the Medical Board of California, believing that this oversight agency, whose job it is to protect healthcare consumers, would take swift action and stop Dr. Hedrick from killing another innocent victim, especially since our son had died such an egregious death. But we were so wrong. We waited more than 4 long years. The medical board finally did file an accusation against Dr. Hedrick with a petition to revoke his medical license. They cited repeated acts of negligence, which resulted in Alex's death. However, in a confidential settlement hearing, a bargain was reached. Via email, more than 4 years after we filed our complaint, we were informed of the board's decision, a public reprimand. Our hearts sank. We were sickened. How could they? How could the medical board, after accusing Dr. Hedrick of repeated acts of negligence causing our son's death, give him nothing more than a slap on the wrist and allow him to continue practicing? The job of the medical board is to protect the public, not to protect dangerous doctors. And in the case of Dr. Daniel J. Hedrick and so many others, they are failing miserably. And that's why we are here to support this Patient Bill of Rights. It will prevent horror stories like ours by providing timely action, transparency, and assuring that appropriate discipline is taken, especially in high priority cases.
I'm Alex's dad, and here to back up what Tammy just said about what happened to my son. And that we know the root of the problem is that there are no consequences for these doctors' behaviors. The medical board, we were assured would handle it and is responsible for disciplining these doctors. But a public reprimand for what happened to our son is a joke, and they know it. And the lobbyists and the pharmaceuticals and medical industry all know it. They make it so complicated for the medical board to do their job. I understand that it's a difficult job, but they like it right where it's at. So they need to be fired and replaced, or it needs to be changed. And they know that too. So we're here to start the changes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Montserrat Ramos. I'm here on behalf of my late fiance, Lloyd Montserrat. He was 36 years old. I'm here today in support of Consumer Watchdog's Patient Bill of Rights. Why do I feel that there's a need for a Patient Bill of Rights? I feel it's needed because consumers approach our medical board in a very vulnerable place. We come to our board when we have witnessed our loved one die needlessly and tragically, or we ourselves have been harmed for life. We believe that their mission, their goal, as stated, to protect consumers while regulating physician licenses through objective enforcement. So once again, we take that leap of faith and we file a consumer complaint, believing that our complaint will be objectively reviewed, and that since it is our complaint, that we will have some input in the process. Overall, we believe that in cases like death, that our medical board will meet its mission and discipline the physician in order to protect other California patients. We participated in the process and discovered that once again, our loved ones' rights were violated. And in cases like Lloyd's case, there was no discipline for a death, not even an investigation. As I said, I'm here representing Lloyd Montserrat. He was someone who devoted his life to protect other Californians' rights. He was the vote director for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, DCCC, a director at NALEO, a chief of staff for the city of Los Angeles, and a well-respected political consultant. Lloyd entered a Los Angeles hospital for elective surgery and died 3 days later at 36 years old with no cause given for his death. I was left with a complete mystery. I hired a private pathologist. I had a private autopsy done. I contacted the LA County coroner. The autopsy report came back with a cause of surgical mistakes, untreated infection, and ultimately sepsis. The LA County coroner went in and took a second look and confirmed the cause. I came to the Medical Board of California with 2 autopsy reports. I discovered that Lloyd's surgeon had an arrest record. The surgeon had been arrested multiple times for felony possession of crack cocaine and prostitution. Each day that I woke up to a new day without Lloyd, I always wondered, how could this doctor not offer him the medical attention he needed? And who was going to be harmed on that day? Who else was going to die? When I finally learned of the surgeon's arrest record and how he was arrested, I finally understood how this could happen. Had there been a probation notification system then, Lloyd would have been notified of his doctor's past, and he would have had the opportunity to choose another doctor. It would have saved Lloyd's life. But Lloyd's surgeon had no concern for his own well-being. So how could he have any concern for the welfare of his patients? He couldn't. Obviously, neither did the medical board. At some point, I began to attend medical board meetings because I wanted to understand how the system worked in order to file the most effective complaint possible. I filed my complaint. It included 2 autopsy reports, one from the LA County coroner. The cause of death was changed by the coroner. I had arrest records. I had other victims of this doctor. Yet Lloyd's complaint didn't make it out of the central complaint unit. Lloyd's death was not investigated. You can die anywhere else in California. Your death will be investigated, but not in a hospital, not with a doctor. There's no way you can die on the street and the agency involved state, oh no, just bag that body. We don't need to investigate that death. So how could a death of a 36-year-old with no cause given by the doctor be ignored by our medical board? I have told the medical board, and I will state here again, consumers need another step in the complaint process. After the doctor is interviewed, the complainant must have the right to respond to the doctor's comments. In cases where enforcement staff or an analyst chooses to close a case without investigation, a complainant should be notified and given the opportunity to respond instead of simply receiving a form letter. In 2010, an independent audit was performed where the medical board was told that fewer doctors were being disciplined in the Los Angeles region than anywhere else in the state. At that meeting, board members were told at the rate they were going in time, no Los Angeles doctors would be disciplined. The audit was virtually ignored. We need transparency with our medical board. A hard-fought uniform standards for substance abusing healthcare professionals was passed into law in 2008, in large part due to Lloyd Montserrat's story. It was a 5-year battle to force our medical board to follow the law. These uniform standards are up for review starting this Monday in Sacramento. Cease practice orders, random drug testing, and public reporting, the few consumer protections we have, are now at risk. As Californians, we need a Bill of Rights that will protect consumers, and we need a medical board whose real mission is to protect California patients. Thank you.
This is my sister, Callie Andrus. She was mentally disabled and lived with me for 9 years full-time. Both my mother and my disabled sister died from medical malpractice at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank. In May of 2012, I took my sister to the ER with a terrible stomach ache. She was crying out in horrendous pain, and even though pain meds had been prescribed within 2 hours of her arrival, they didn't give it to her for over 15 hours. They brought her a radioactive beverage to drink for a CT scan, and shortly thereafter they finally gave her a pain medication which was 7 times stronger than morphine, a drug that she had at least 6 contraindications for. The only time I left her side was when they wheeled her away to have a CT scan. When they brought her back, her body and face were contorted into a frozen scream, something that will haunt me forever. Because of the sedative effect of the pain meds, she ended up aspirating the CT beverage into her lungs, causing pulmonary edema, and went into cardiac arrest. The hospital staff was under the wrong impression that she was a DNR, a do not resuscitate, stood around doing nothing while she laid there while her heart was not beating. I heard one of the nurses very flippantly say, "Well, she's a DNR." Another nurse turned to me and asked if that was true, and I told her no, it wasn't true. They ended up calling a code blue at that point and were able to revive her 17 minutes later, but it was too late. She was nearly brain dead. She died the very next day. We had a private autopsy done as well, which revealed that she actually had a strangulated bowel that had burst and was sending toxins into her abdomen, causing sepsis. She was in need of emergency surgery the moment we arrived at the ER some 18 hours earlier. Due to California's micro law, I was nearly incapable of getting a lawyer to take our lawsuit. Micro limits what people with limited incomes can sue for pain and suffering damages. Because my sister was mentally disabled, unmarried, with no children, that law valued her life at less than $250,000 in 1974 valued dollars, the year that Governor Brown signed MICRA into law. Today that amount should be well over $1 million. Then I turned to the medical board to file a complaint against the doctor whose actions led to my sister's death, and they refused to investigate and closed the complaint after waiting 6 months. They didn't even bother to get a certified copy of her medical records from the hospital and did not have a copy of her private autopsy. Worst of all, no one from the medical board called me to interview me or ask me any questions. When I complained, they briefly pretended to reopen the case for a few weeks, but then just closed it again. When I did a Public Record Act request to get a copy of my sister's file to check to make sure they had done their due diligence on the case, they illegally denied the request and refused to send me any documents. Doctors have a right to appeal decisions against them by the medical board, but citizens do not. I have no way to verify if they ever did anything on my complaint, or even if the experts were qualified to look at the case. There is no transparency or true oversight with the medical board. They take in over 10,000 complaints every year, but only about 4% of them end up in any disciplinary action. I believe this is due in part to their doctor majority board and how they kowtow to the California Medical Association, an entity that over 2/3 of California's doctors refuse to join. The medical board needs to be audited by the state auditor, but we also need to get this patient bill of rights approved to make the board transparent in how they behave and responsible for their inaction in protecting citizens of this state. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marion Hollingsworth, and I became a patient safety advocate after my father became the victim of deliberate medical harm. I say deliberate because this was not an error. My 86-year-old father was deliberately given antipsychotic drugs without any prior assessment after he went into the hospital to find out why his back was hurting. These drugs, Haldol and Risperdal, carry black box warnings. They can cause death or serious side effects in elderly patients. I was told, though, that his sudden mental breakdown was hospital delirium, which would resolve in a nursing home. At that home, my father was given even more antipsychotic drugs along with double doses of Ambien. My father experienced heart troubles associated with these drugs, along with severe dehydration, kidney troubles, low white blood cell count, and multiple falls, 7 falls in 12 days. He was dead in less than 2 months. Afterwards, I obtained my father's medical records and saw what had actually been done to him. And I discovered a number of falsified consent forms, mostly for the antipsychotic drugs. But the one that really broke my heart was the falsified do not resuscitate order. So if Dad coded, no one would try to save him. Outraged, I turned to the medical board, hoping they would protect other patients from these doctors. The board dismissed my complaint against my father's primary care, saying he did provide standard of care. As for the nursing home doctor who watched my father as he lay dying from the side effects and falsified that DNR, she just got a public letter of reprimand. That's it. I feel the medical board failed me, my father, and the people of California with this so-called discipline. The investigators also lied to me. I was told my complaint was sent to San Bernardino instead of staying in San Diego because San Diego was understaffed, and it turned out that was not the case. I was told the Attorney General's office would be writing the PLR. Because they were understaffed, it would take a while. It turned out that the medical board writes the PLRs, not the AG's office, and the AG's office assured me they were not understaffed. And also I was told that the PLR would not be posted on the medical board website until the doctor had taken classes. It took her 1.5 years to take these classes. Normally that's cause for another accusation, but the medical board let it slide. And when I asked why a doctor could get away with a reprimand in a death case, I was told the board had the right to make exceptions in any cases. This patient Bill of Rights is sorely needed to ensure that this medical board is transparent to the public. Death cases should be a priority and should never be dismissed with just a public reprimand. Harm patients and their families should have more input with investigations and should have the right to appeal decisions, just the way the doctors do. And finally, no complaint should take 3 or even 4 years to complete. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Marion. I'm going to close out just so everyone is able to enter the medical board meeting, which begins right about now at 2:30. They're all going to go testify to the board and ask them to endorse this patient bill of rights. I will just say that each of their cases illustrates the fact that secrecy at the medical board has allowed the lack of enforcement against dangerous doctors to continue unchecked. When we shine the light on the practices of the medical board, it will become much clearer how the board is failing to act in serious cases of patient harm and illuminate the reforms that we need. So we are bringing the Patient Bill of Rights to the medical board today, urging them to change their course, to begin prioritizing patient safety over doctor protection and ensure that future patients are not harmed in California. My apologies to the folks on the phone. We don't have time for questions right now. However, you can call my cell phone, 310-403-0284, with any questions. And the medical board meeting is webcast at mbc, M as in Michael, B as in Brian, C as in Charles, .ca.gov. Thank you, everyone.